What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We have Charles Guerrier, who is director of Sea Brew, with us this morning. Charles, thank you for taking some time.
Oh, thanks very much for the invitation. Very, very happy to be here.
Yes, the invitation came because our friend Brett Reynolds connected us. This week is actually brought to us by Brett Reynolds. 3 guests this week, all whose work is focused in Asia and met everybody in Singapore. This is one of the most important functions of the show is 95% of our guests come from good people connecting good people. And so that's why we're talking, and I'm excited about the opportunity to speak with you. As a certified Cicerone, a longtime beer geek, we have a beer brand, have done tons of collaborations, a fermentation nerd at all levels. This is always exciting to me when we can talk about craft beer, talk about the beer industry. And anytime I can learn about an industry in craft beer outside of our market that I don't really understand, I'm fascinated. So we're going to get into that a little bit. First, tell everybody, Sea Brew. What exactly is Sea Brew?
Yeah, well, we started Sea Brew, would have been about 2015. And it was a spin-off of the Singapore Craft Beer Week, which we were organizing. And we were trying to find a way where we could connect brewers and bring the brewers of the region together. And we started off literally in the back room of a brew pub in Singapore.
Perfect.
We had it was 70 people crammed into the back room of this place called Brewworks, and it was probably half a day, just over half a day. A few people came in, did some talks. We drank a lot of beer, and then we looked at what we were doing. I thought, this could be there could be a lot more to this. Not just, it was mostly people from Singapore who came because obviously it was the first one and we were based in Singapore. And then we thought, okay, well, let's take a look. And I actually came over to the US in between our first and our second Sea Brew. I went to the CBC in the US.
And what city was it in at the time?
That was Philadelphia.
Nice.
So it was cold, wet, and miserable. Very, very unlike Singapore. Fantastic time. Beers were amazing. Food was fantastic. I had a really, really good time. And just to see what was possible. Because I think really what we see in the Asian craft beer scene is that I guess originally we were about 20 years behind the US.
Sure.
But we're catching up so quickly. I would say probably now we have the latest trends that America is going through. We've already caught up in those in 20 years in Asia. We've caught up what America's done probably in 20 years. We've done in 5 years.
Yeah, just probably not at the scale, the amount of breweries yet, but the trends, you have unfettered access now. You can see what's happening across the world and you can emulate or reimagine trends. I think is great. I want to give people the definition though.
Yeah.
Sea Brew is Southeast Asia Brewers, correct? So very specifically focused on having a conference where you're bringing thought leaders from across the industry together, very much like the Craft Brewers Conference is doing that you mentioned. So it was important for you to bring what you thought was maybe the American model as far as the conference goes, or as at least the kind of technical talks that are being given or the culture. Why was it important for you, I guess, to go to the States to come here and see what was happening here and then bring that model and tweak that model, I'm sure, and make it specific to the Southeast Asian brewing market? But why do you think it was important to come to the States?
Obviously, the States is, I guess, it's a hotbed of craft brewing around the world. There are, I have no disrespect for Germans or for the Brits or for the Belgians. The US has been very innovative, which strikes a chord with Asia. Asia's being very innovative at the moment. There's new things going on. One of the problems in Asia is there's a lack of access to education for brewers. So really what we wanted to do with the conference, we wanted to bring technical knowledge to the region, bring brewers together. One of the important things is just as a gathering place for people to exchange ideas, but also to bring in Brewers from the US have come to our conference. We've had the likes of Jamil Zainashev, John Palmer, Fal Allen. They've all come in. They shared knowledge with the brewers in Asia. And the idea of the conference, so the South East Asia Brewers Conference is kind of the full name of it. So the idea was to bring brewers together to share that knowledge. I think because there is an affinity to America, to the craft brewing scene in America. A lot of the brewers have, some of them come from America. They're American brewers brewing in the region. People look to America. They look to America as a leader in the craft industry, definitely.
Makes sense. So I want to take people back now even further before you started Sea Brew. Give a little origin story on you. I'm always fascinated why we find our way into the past that we're on. And so for you, being a Brit, as you said, you started there and you caught the travel bug. And so talk about that. Take us back to that time and when you first really got into the beverage scene and kind of how that escalated and turned into kind of being a leader in craft beer across Asia.
Yeah, well, I kind of fell into it by accident, really.
Of course, don't we always?
I think most of us do. I mean, who makes a lifestyle choice going into the F&B industry? No. I left the UK in '92 and went traveling. So I did a couple of years traveling around the Pacific. So I actually went across the US and Canada, through Hawaii, down Samoa, Fiji, New Zealand. And my big plan was to work for a bit in New Zealand and then head back to the UK. So, I started working in New Zealand. I had such a good time. I'd spent all my money. So I could literally only afford a flight to Australia. So on a plane, went to Australia. And the great thing is, as a Brit, you can work for a year in Australia. You can get a work visa easily. So I then worked in Australia for a year. And the grand scheme was then to make my way up through China, take the Trans-Siberian across Russia, and then head back to the UK. So that would have been 1994. But again, I had such a great time in Australia that I had enough money to get me to Hong Kong. So I traveled up to Hong Kong, and at the time it was still part of the British. It was a British territory,
right?
So I could work in Hong Kong, and the easiest job to get in Hong Kong was working in bars. So that's where I started. That was back in 1994. That was started there. I did 4 years in Hong Kong.
And did you know from those early times, like getting into the bar scene, that was meant for you, or was it still just a job and you kind of had the next thing going?
It was just to make a living, make some money, and just get enough money to pay my way back to the UK, basically. So I was doing that, and then decided, okay, well, 4 years in Hong Kong, time to move on. So I then moved down to Singapore, and it was easy for me to get a job in the bar industry in Singapore because I already had experience in Hong Kong. And started working bars in Singapore, and then as I rolled on, I opened up my own place, a little regulars hole in the wall in Singapore. And then in 2002, we opened up a Belgian restaurant. So that was it's really kind of one of the early craft movers, I guess, in Singapore.
Yeah, what was that called?
It was called Oster's Belgian Brasserie.
Oster's Belgian. So you bring in delirium tremens and things like that to the market. Oh, yeah. Those were some early. Yeah. I remember coming up and knowing a little bit about beer. And for me, it was Fat Tire. Was we would go and pick up 9 cases of Fat Tire because they didn't sell it in our state. We had to go across state lines. We felt like we were bootleggers or something. And I remember that. And I remember very distinctly going to a place in Des Moines, Iowa called the Royal Mile. And upstairs is a little Belgian beer bar and having these beers and going, I understand beer. I understand malt and hops. What's this other flavor? And they said yeast. And it blew my mind, and it put me on a path that led to all the work I've done in craft beer over the years. Yeast. And it was the Belgian beers, Delirium Tremens. Very much I remember going, what is that flavor? Do they fruit this? They're like, no, that's the yeast character.
That's just coming. That's just natural. Yeah. Yeah. So
I changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going to, there's a place in Brussels called L'Estaminat. just off. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Grand Place in Brussels, if you've been over there.
Yes.
And they have a Lambic Blanche there. And it just it was the first time I'd ever had lambics. And I sat down, and the waiter comes up, and he's got a monk's uniform on, and he gives you a jug. Yeah, I had no idea what was going on, so he just gave me a jug, and we ordered a little bit of food, which you kind of assemble yourself, a bit of cheese on some bread and some pickles, and you just start ticking away. And the first sip was like, what is that? Yeah, what on earth is it? Yeah, and suddenly all these different flavors coming through, and it's getting kind of gingery flavors coming through, and it's like, oh my god, yeah, this is not lager. Yeah, this is different. Yeah.
This is very different than a proper pint. This is a whole different ball game, and so that feels very much like that moment where it crystallizes for you when you have those type of beers. You go, this is different. Something about this is completely different. I'm not just behind the bar getting people drunk. There's an experiential side. There's a flavor component that can really change the way that people interact with this simple, humble product. And so that for you very much feels like it crystallized for you and kind of puts you on a path much different than just working the bar. Is that correct?
Yeah. We opened, when we opened up Oysters, we were looking at probably I guess a 40% food, 60% beverage mix to the restaurant. So it was more towards a beer, but then we realised, hang on a second, everyone's eating the food. So because we had a full-on Belgian menu, we'd gone to Belgium, we'd taken our chef over there, got all the Belgian food going, and we also had Belgian-sized portions, which we realised after a couple of months that in Singapore people don't eat Belgian-sized portions. They
don't need 2 pounds of moules and frites. There's just no chance.
No. Yeah, exactly. But also what we did is we kept in a time in Singapore where everything was opening up in terms of people were opening their doors. Many years ago, you go to Singapore and all the bars were closed up. People wouldn't sit outside. It's too hot. And probably in the early 2000s, that was when all the bars started opening up and the Singaporeans started sitting outside. So it was all the rage was to be sitting outside, probably, let's say, late 1990s, early 2000s. And we looked at the trend and we said, well, hang on a second, this doesn't work with Belgian beers. If you're having the big strong ones, and we wanted people to be able to enjoy the big beers as well as your Jupilers, your Hoegaardens, those lighter, easy drinking beers. So we consciously kept the doors closed and kept the aircon cranked up. So somebody could drink a Rochefort. I mean, if you've ever tried drinking,
they're not passing out outside from drinking a quad.
Exactly. We did have a few of those. I won't lie. Sure. There were a few of those. But they could try drinking a Rochefort 10 in 30 degrees heat. It's a tough ask. Yeah. So we consciously kept the doors closed, and it was. Kind of, I guess, the early days of introducing people to new beers and new styles of beer, and it very well. We had the bar open for about 14 years. I think it was open for. So it was a very good run for a bar in these parts. Yeah,
and then fast forward 2014, you start a Singapore Craft Beer Week, and that really is the impetus for what leads to Sea Brew, the conference, kind of going deep and wide when it came to like bringing craft beer into the mindset and into the zeitgeist of what was happening in Asia, starting in Singapore. So what was the catalyst in 2014 to say, we're going to do the first ever Craft Beer Week?
I think it was to bring the community together. We're trying to think of ways of how we can bring the community together, how we can get people working together. Because I'm a great believer in stronger together. Particularly small brands. Small brands can't compete in the big market with these huge brands. So there needs to be an element of working together, sharing resources, sharing opportunities. And what we wanted to do was have an umbrella event which brands could get in and distributors and breweries could get in behind it and say, okay, well, let's be part of this event. I think it's there's the grand scheme is to get everybody together. We had events running around town, and we would organize. We had a website rolling; people could find out what was going on. We organized events. We had Old World's New Frontiers event, which we ran, and we had 2 breweries who had traditional style beers and 2 breweries that had modern beers. And the brewers stood up and they did a talk about, what makes it a traditional beer, and then another one, what makes it a modern beer. And that was really well attended. We had 80, 90 people to that in the back room of a brewery. But it was great. It had a great feel to it.
Stuff happens in the back room of a brewery, of a bar, of a pub, of a restaurant, of a club. That's where the best stuff always happens.
Oh, yeah.
Great stories come out of the back rooms of places like that.
Yeah.
All right. So then you take that momentum. You see that there's a demand in the market. There's a need there. There's a little bit of a niche there that you can carve out. And you go into the event itself, and you went to the States after the first event you mentioned, before the second.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you had some trials and triumphs and tribulations abroad trying to figure out how to do that first event. Talk about that a little bit. What was it like kind of bringing the first Sea Brew conference, some of the challenges and opportunities? As I know, plenty of listeners have organized their own events and struggled with them, have been to some of the big conferences. We see a lot of smaller, right? It used to be the Great American Beer Festival, Craft Brewers Conference were the only shows in town, the only game in town for a long time. Now there's maybe too many festivals and conferences in the States.
Yeah,
a lot of white noise. It's hard for people to break through. So I want people to think about kind of you at the onset, getting to a little bit of a glimpse of the things that work, don't work. Give us some of the practical approaches that you took to give some people who might be looking at doing their own conferences or doing their conferences and wanting to evolve them. Give us some insights.
Yeah, well, for me, it was a real steep learning curve, because I'd come from the service side of the industry, so running bars, running restaurants, and running businesses, and having to kind of get to know the technical side, the supply side, the ingredient suppliers, the equipment suppliers. And I was very lucky in the early days. I had a good friend who was a hop supplier. So when we went to the CBC, he kind of took me under his wing and said, right, you got to meet these guys. You got to meet these guys. This is how this industry works. This is how this industry works. And so it's always good to have that guy to really get you up and rolling. And
who was that?
Make sure you. Unfortunately, the guy's passed away now. But he ran a company called Hops Connect. A guy called John O'Connor, based up out of Canada. And he took me under his wing and he said, "Hey, look, this is how it works. This is how the different sides of the industry work." And so he really helped me to go from the first conference to the second conference. And then after the second conference, I sat down with a friend of mine who was from the conferencing industry. And we spoke about what I was doing and what was happening with the conference and kind of the possibilities of where we could go with this. And she said, "You've got to sit down with a friend of mine who's just left the company she was working with. He just left the company after working for years and years in the conference industry." And she said, "Look, he's going out on his own. You've got to sit down and talk with him, because he could really help you with develop this conference." So we sat down and we had a chat. I was looking at it going, how am I going to afford this guy?
Right.
Yeah, he's a professional in the conferencing industry. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I bite the bullet and get him on board for the next year? And the next year we'd planned to move to Vietnam, so we decided to start moving the show around the region after the second year.
Gotcha.
So we kind of wanted to get in our safe area. So in Singapore, we wanted to develop a footprint. And once we developed that footprint, then we could start moving the show and increasing the show. So the second year we brought on a small trade fair element. So I think we had about 150 people came the second year, and we had 6-8 suppliers in a small room with tables and brochures and things. And it's like, okay, there was always a plan for maybe 3 or 4 years to go from tables to booths. And to people bringing equipment to the show. So we knew first time round, people aren't going to be shipping equipment to the show, and we're not going to be doing big booths and things. Exactly. So I sat down with Marcus, who was this consultant, And I was like, yeah, what do I do? Do I bite the bullet and say, okay, yeah, let's try and get him on board? Or do I struggle through, get the next show done, which would have been our third show, and then go, okay, well, let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can get Marcus on board to help number 4. And I sat down and said to myself, okay, if you were a consulting to yourself, what would you do? And I was like, get that guy on board, yes. Hire him, whatever, somehow work out a package that he's happy with to get him on board.
Yes.
Boom. Best thing I ever did.
Yes. There's 3 things I want to touch on. I want people to really listen to this. There's 3 things in that little couple minutes that are so important when you're doing anything, especially if you're bringing on stakeholders, if you're creating community. This is very important. First, mentorship is so important. To have somebody like John take you under their wing changed everything, because you would have fumbled around in the dark and maybe have never gotten to the point of breaking through and having this become a sustained effort for years and years and years, right? And grow to the scale that it's at now. That is so important. And the camaraderie within craft beer has been monumental. I am always so struck and so impressed by the humans, that the amount of collaboration beers to the point of conferences and festivals, maybe there's too many collaboration beers. Every beer is a collaboration beer, and I love it. I think it's important. So that was one. Your friend connecting you with Marcus, Brett connecting us, good people connecting good people. It matters. It makes a difference. You never know where the serendipity will come back. Pay attention to that. Be the one connecting people, or be open to being connected. Pay attention, people. Yeah. The third is find those aces and get them in. You figure the rest out later. If there's somebody that has it that you need, that complements you, get them on board. Figure the rest out later. Put your intent out there. I think these 3 things are so fundamentally important, which is clearly these 3 things I'm sure you have done multiple times throughout, been mentored and had mentees, connected good people, or been connected by good people, and just find good, talented, passionate people and get them on board. So I love it. I'm so glad these are 3 thesis items that I'm very passionate about, and you just articulated all 3 of them in a couple minute span. So well done, Charles. All right. I want to talk about the beer markets, right? You have a vantage point where you get to watch internationally things that are happening, trends. You're talking to luminaries and movers and shakers and tastemakers across the industry, across the globe, and then kind of cultivating the community, seeing where the trends are at within Asia, kind of spurring them forward by bringing something from the States, let's say, or vice versa. So give us a couple of top things, maybe 3 things that you see as far as trends in the industry, if it's specifically within styles, if it's technology, if it's brand and culture, that are just top of mind for you, that are part of the conversations when you and your team are talking about we're talking about 2020, 2021, 2022, all that. Where's your heads at?
Yeah, like I say, I think you've got to, putting a conference together, you've got to address trends in the industry. You look at macro and you look at micro. So what are the macro trends in the industry? Where is the industry going? How's it going to develop over the next few years? And for us, for this year in particular, what we were looking at was, so the title of the conference for this year was Brew for Today, Build for Tomorrow. Because there's a lot of, I wouldn't say short-term thinking in the industry, but there's a lot of people getting in, going, right, okay, let's brew. I'm going to make great beer.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, how are you going to sell that? Yeah, you can brew it, but if you can't sell it, there's no point brewing it. So how do we help people? How do we help to bring people in who are going to, act as mentors or people who are known in the industry that people will listen to and go, yeah, great. Yeah, we really like what he's talking about. We had last year, we had a brewer come in, or a brewery owner come in from the UK. And the real thing for me was during it, I was talking to one of the people who was at his presentation, and he was talking about brand building and how they develop their brand. And after his talk, this lady came up to me and said, I was messaging my team during that presentation because he's doing stuff that he's done stuff that we should be doing. Yeah, we're doing things wrong. We should be doing things this way. So you look at those macro trends and go, okay, what's happening in the industry? Asia, for example, is moving so fast that a lot of people don't have time. They don't have time to sit down and take stock. I mean, this COVID has been a terrible time for everybody, but it's allowed people to slow down and say, hang on a second, where are we going?
Yes.
We're just the same as everybody else. We were charging forwards 100 miles an hour. We've gone from one conference a few years ago. We now run the Asia Beer Championships. This year we had lined up 8 technical sessions all over the region. So we had technical sessions in Ho Chi Minh, in Bangkok, in Manila, in Seoul. And all those have had to be put on hold because of what's going on. But it's enabled us to slow down and say, well, hang on a second, what's really happening? Where are we going? And we've reevaluated what we're doing as a business. And to a certain extent, we can pivot a bit as well, which has been good. We're looking at a new direction, which we're going to go into. So you've got those macro trends, and then the micro trends. Obviously, you're looking at beer styles, different processes, new ideas coming into the production side of the business. So it's really trying to keep an eye on what's happening there, and looking at news wires, looking at trends in America, in Europe, saying, hey, what's going on? What would be interesting? We see Asian brewers having a go at these things. Let's get somebody in to talk about what they've done. And it might be an Asian brewer sharing his experiences. It might be an American brewer coming in saying, hey, look, this is what we did.
Any brewers, any of those micro trends that you see throughout Asia that when you see it, you go, that's going to be big. And potentially I'm interested because we're so known for innovation, hyper innovation at hyper speed here in the States. Sometimes to our detriment, we try so many things that you throw enough crayons at the wall, something's going to stick. It's a lot of crayon on the wall, right? And so it's our strength. And sometimes it's like, just because you can does not mean that you should. So there's some of that dynamic. Yeah. I'm very interested in Asia as it is moving fast. There's also a lot of methodical thinking and tradition. There's differences in regulation and government, all of these different things at play. Do you see anything happening in Asia where you're talking to some of your American contemporaries saying, you should look out for this? This is going to be interesting and could actually go the other direction and become a trend coming from Asia influencing the States?
I think one of the things could be kind of fruit additions to beers. I know America has a big thing with hops, with strength, with big, powerful beers. It's actually a lot of the breweries in Asia are experimenting, and a lot of them are doing it very successfully with Asian flavors, with guava. I mean, guavas and gozas just absolutely perfect. There's a brewery in Singapore, the Singapore Beer Project, and they made a sour plum, guava and sour plum goza. I think a Hong Kong brewery as well did a sour plum goza, and these are Asian flavors which they're incorporating into the beer, which I know American breweries are trying it and they are doing different flavored beers, but I've got to admit, I think I've had quite a few really good ones in Asia that I think have probably hit the mark slightly better than they have in America.
Do you think some of that is a couple of things? One, the understanding of the ingredient themselves. I'm very fascinated a lot when I see, say, a guava beer and then have a conversation with the brewer about, like, what is it about guava? And when you've eaten guava, and they say, well, I've never had guava. So you've never had a fresh guava. You've never picked it off the tree. Like, there is something different when you truly understand, like, the terroir of that product. So I'm interested in that. And then also spices. The understanding of spices throughout Asia is on a completely different level. We really don't understand spices like they do in Asia. And so I'm interested in that first, like the connection to the product themselves, that they grew up eating guava, that there's a familial connection to that I think transcends and then reflects in the beer itself. And then maybe let's touch on spices as we kind of start to wrap this up. I want to get a couple more nuggets for people.
Yeah, and going back to this guava beer, which they brewed in Singapore, and the brewer went out to people in food centers, in hawker stalls, and say, look, tell me what flavors you like. You know, you're drinking a regular lager beer. Tell me what flavor you like in that beer. Tell me, and you know, guava. Let's say guava is a very common flavor in Asia, and it just so happens that it suits a goza fantastically. That salty sourness, yeah, it works really well, and they do that. There is a lot more. There's a lesser of reliance on processed food than there is on fresh food. So there's so much. Yeah, they're all eating fresh food. They've got these fresh flavors, and Kampot peppers from Cambodia.
I don't even know
why would you throw that in a beer? Yeah. But it just, there's some beers out there that they've worked. They have this light pepperiness. You know, some brewers, you try their beers and you go, woof, why would you throw that much pepper in a beer? Why would you throw that much Sichuan pepper in a beer? You're just killing it. But it's that the delicate additions of the flavors. I mean, I think when it comes to spices, the Pasteur Street Brewing Company, I'm not sure if you're aware of them, from Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. They make an amazing jasmine IPA. And it's a very easy drinking IPA, fairly light on the hop, so it's not too aggressive.
Yeah.
But then there's this lovely undernotes of jasmine in it, which is just fantastic. And they also produce a passion fruit wheat, which apparently the brewers in America who've had it say, look, we just can't get this quality ingredient in the US. Pulp just doesn't work. You need that fresh passion fruit. You need the fresh flavors in the
yes. This is the two parts to this, and then we'll kind of wrap that I think are important for brewers, for people across craft beer, also consumers on the other side, because the market has really driven, like, we want crazy, we want new, we want to have a different beer every single week from brewery. And now breweries have to produce 100 beers in a year to stay relevant. That's a challenge. It stresses. And so now they're like, just get me any fruit. I'll throw the guava in there and the passion fruit and the this and the that. It's not cultivated in a way that's thoughtful. Often there's plenty of people that do it well, but often you're just like, whatever the fruit company has, just get the next one and throw it in that base beer. The way that those beers, the two beers you just mentioned, passion fruit wheat, I've had 7, 9, 22 of those in the States. A jasmine IPA, same, 3, 9, 12 of them. Yet I can always tell that they haven't necessarily, and not always, but I can tell that they haven't used those ingredients and to understand the complexity, the nuance, the balance, the delicacy, the impact. And a lot of times it's like, I just need to taste more. And they go, until it punches you in the face and you go, wow, that's a lot of flavor. That must be good. Yeah. Versus in Asia, very much jasmine, it evokes emotion for people. And that's what I want people to think about. Evoking emotion in the way that I just had a gin where they went and harvested botanicals from the foothills and the mountains of Colorado. That tastes like an emotion that people have when they go out and see the aspens turn here. That's what I want people to think about. And that's clearly an important thing. That jasmine IPA, it speaks truly to jasmine, and everybody in Ho Chi Minh knows jasmine really well. So I appreciate that. Last thoughts. We're going to wrap here in about a minute. Last thoughts. Anything you want to leave us with? Any more nuggets? This is really great, Charles. I appreciate it.
I just think it's watch Asia. I mean, it's firing on all cylinders. There's so much going on, and the great thing is that there's a mixture of brewers. You've got Asian brewers. They're working with American brewers, with European brewers. It's a great mixing pot. So there's going to be some amazing things coming out of Asia in the next 5 or 10 years. And it's just because everything's booming, the economies are pushing, they're driving ahead. There's so much opportunity over there to try new things and try. It's going to be very exciting. I'm really excited what's going to happen over the next few years. So I think people should watch Asia very carefully.
Now I am fired up. We've done, like, my Good Bugs collaboration beer brand. We've done like 50 beers over the last 3 years. We have not done one with a brewery in Asia. That is coming. Charles, I'm going to look to you.
Come over.
Connect us there. I appreciate it, Charles. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thanks for sharing a little bit. Just these little tidbits I think are so important. There's so many similarities, the way that we interact with culture and craft beer across the globe. And there's these little nuanced differences. And I think we can definitely learn from each other. So thank you so much, Charles.
Thanks very much, Jensen. It was a pleasure to be here, and it's absolutely fantastic podcast. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you. Cheers. All right. Yes. All my craft beer nerds, listen up. There was a couple little great things, and this transcends for everybody. Really, really pay attention to the camaraderie and collaboration. It is so unbelievable, and I'm always completely struck by it. I'll reiterate that again. Good people connecting good people. Once again, this episode, Brett Reynolds connected us. They met in Singapore. He's watched the show. We've interacted several times. Said, you know who you need to talk to? My answer is yes. It's always yes. So for you, connecting with more people, I will have them on the show. And for you, always think about connecting with good people or connecting good people. It really makes a difference. It matters. And always get good people on board. Just do it. Whatever it takes, just do it. Those were really great. The nuance, the balance, evoking emotion, thinking about the ingredient itself versus just layering it on top and just hitting people over the face. These are a couple of the things that I think we can definitely learn from what's happening in the Asian market. So, all right, everybody. Great show today. I think I'm going to go have a beer. Cheers.